But let's get stuck in right now, before we have that panel session, to actually what is in this draft transport strategy. To find out, let's listen to Stephen Bishop, who's Head of Transport Strategy and Economics at SDG, and also Mark Valleley, Technical Lead from Transport for the South East, who are going to talk you through it, tell you what it's all about, and I hope also direct you towards a copy of it. That might be helpful. Maybe, who knows. Anyway, Stephen and Mark, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Valleley. I am Technical Lead for TFSE, and with Stephen Bishop from Steer. Today I'm going to talk you through some of the detail of how we've gone about developing our transport strategy. As Anthony said, what we're going to tell you is what we've been up to for the last year since many of you were here. In terms of just how we're going to run through that, I'm going to talk to you about some of the characteristics of our region and how they've influenced the development of the strategy. And then Stephen is then going to talk through the approach we've adopted, how we've developed a vision for 2050 for the South East, and talk about the sort of the meat of the strategy and how that's presented to you as looking at 6 journey types. I'm then going to come back at the end and just talk about some of the next steps in terms of how we're going to move forward. Now we've got the draft strategy, what we're going to do next, and tell you what we're going to be up to. So just in opening up, in terms of there's been a lot of work has gone into the development of this strategy. It's, as you hope you will see, it's innovative in its approach. We're talking about a different way of doing things, both in terms of the way that we've gone about developing the strategy, but also what some of the outcomes of that are. And I need to think about how moving forward, doing things in a different way. It's ambitious in its vision that you'll see that we've created, and part of today is getting your buy-in to that vision and getting your comments on that vision. Are we looking to land in the right place in 2050? But it's also, there are some challenges, as Rupert's already identified. This stuff isn't easy. There are some significant changes that we're going to need to think about making in the future to make the strategy work. So just looking at some of the characteristics of our region and how they've influenced the development of the strategy. So this is a slide sort of that we showed you last time you came. This is the outcomes of the economic connectivity review that we undertook as the first piece of work to start us on the journey of developing the strategy. And the key aim of that work was to sort of look at the economic geography of the South East and identify the key strategic corridors within the South East that are important to linking the international gateways that Rupert's talked about, and also linking the economic hubs, the many economic hubs that we have within our geography that are important to the economy. So the economic connectivity review that we published July last year has provided us with the solid basis to move into the development of the transport strategy, looking at how we can sort of put some meat on the bones now and how we can improve connectivity for people, goods and businesses within the South East. So Rupert talked about our environment, and what this slide shows and illustrates quite strongly is the importance of the environment within the South East. We have within our geography significant areas that are either designated as national park. We have 2 national parks, New Forest and the South Downs, but also significant areas that are designated as areas of outstanding national beauty. Got it out. Obviously these are environmental assets. They're the reason why we all want to live, work and spend our leisure time within the South East. So that's the positive. From a transport sort of planning point of view, they also act as constraints. So any idea that sort of moving forward that we can build our way out of some of the problems that we have, yes, there will be a need for infrastructure improvements moving forward, but the idea that we can go forward with whole-scale, large new pieces of transport infrastructure, the constraints that we have here mean that that's not an option that's open to us. One other thing that the Economic Connectivity Review identified was within our geography what the key industrial sectors are. So what this slide just illustrates are those key sectors that we've identified that are important to the economy as it exists at the moment, or sectors that have been identified that have the potential to grow significantly in the future. So these are the ones that we're sort of looking to back moving forward. Some of them have particular geographical locations, and some of them are sort of more pervasive across the geography. So the key challenge is, what can we do in terms of thinking about connectivity to enable these sectors to continue to grow and ensure that the contribution that the South East makes to the UK economy, which is significant, that also continues to grow, and we're providing the government with the returns to help then fund the infrastructure that we're looking forward. Now, in terms of some of the challenges, this slide just shows some jobs growth numbers that come out of central government, looking at jobs growth between now and 2041, and those areas sort of in the darker blue are areas which have a forecast between now and 2041 to have 15,000 or more jobs created within those areas. And you can see they're concentrated. We have concentrations of job growth within some of our urban areas. Brighton and Hove stands out there. You've got Southampton and Portsmouth, and also out in the Thames Valley, there's significant forecast levels of job growth. But then if you look to the housing forecasts, sort of similar data, you will see that slightly different picture starts to emerge, and the sort of the locations where significant housing growth is forecast to happen. There's obviously wider spread across the South East, but don't necessarily match up with the locations where the jobs growth is forecast to happen. So obviously some challenges there in terms of the location of housing and jobs, and the travel implications that might stem from that. Now, deprivation, another key issue that we're obviously anxious to tackle moving forward. And what this slide shows you is, within the South East, everyone, the message out is usually, well, it's all very prosperous, the South East, you all live in big houses and it's all fine. But we have within our geography, we have to face up to the fact within our geography, we have significant areas of deprivation. And what this slide shows in the oranges and the reds are those wards within our geography which are in the top 30% most deprived within England. And the red ones are the ones in the top 10%. So we have within our geography, and as it shows, very much kind of lots of these the locations are coastal. And the blue, if you're wondering what the blue is, that shows journey time into central London. So the lightest blue, so that comes out into our geography, are those areas which were in 60 to 90 minutes of travel time to central London. So there's obviously the peripherality of those locations, and their distance from London is and travel time to London sort of related. I wouldn't want for one moment to suggest that the answer to this is we need to improve connectivity to London to solve the deprivation issues within those areas, but it starts to show the linkage between transport and deprivation and something that we need to tackle moving forward. Just lastly, another kind of key characteristic to obviously highlight are the levels of congestion that we exist within our road network. 1 in 5 passengers travelling in the peak hour into central London by rail are now standing. But this slide just looks at some road congestion numbers, and these are based on, a little bit techie here, but this is what this slide shows is average AM peak journey times as a percentage of free flow conditions. So those areas shown in red are the journey time is only 40% of what it is in a free flow conditions in the middle of the night. So we can see that there are significant congestion issues, particularly starting to manifest or already present in the M25 obviously stands out there, but some of the arterial roads that meet up with the M25 congestion happening there in the AM peak, but also down on the south coast, you can see that in the Southampton, the Solent area, the M27 is lots of that is red, and further sort of moving westwards or eastwards, along the south coast, again significant areas of congestion. And just thinking about the future, obviously. Forecast, you follow government forecasts, this is just going to get worse, and something that we need to think about tackling moving forward. So I'm now just going to hand over to Stephen. There's some context. Hand over to Stephen, who's going to talk you through some of our approach to the development of the strategy, how we've developed our vision, and talk about the actual strategy itself. Okay.
Thank you, Mark, and good morning. I'm Stephen Bishop, Head of Strategy and Economics at Steer. As Mark mentioned, existing conditions show that the business as usual and continuing with our current approaches won't work and isn't working. What do government models tell us about the South East? Population of 7.8 million, employment of 3.3 million, £183 billion of GVA contributed to the national economy each year, and 21 trips. If we consider where these are, 80% of all of these trips start and finish within the South East. So yes, London is important, but the vast majority start and finish within the South East. And 70% of all trips are made by car. So our travel is heavily dominated by private vehicles, and that also includes vans and HGVs. Government forecasts for England and Wales show a huge range from 17% increase to 51% increase on top of the 300 billion vehicle miles per year across England and Wales. If we think about the current congestions that Mark just showed, and we add this on top in a predict and provide way and think about the challenges of accommodating this sort of growth with increasing the capacity of our highway network, it is extremely challenging and not necessarily a future that we want to be planning for. Our modelling that we developed as part of the strategy process shows that if we continue in this way, the business as usual will present some of the following outcomes in the future. Almost 1 million additional people, 400,000 more jobs, a significant increase in GVA, 217 billion additional compared to current, but 3 million more trips a day, taking us to 24 million trips a day. And that will mean a 19% increase in private vehicles, vans, and HGVs. We do not see that as sustainable or feasible, and therefore we have taken a different approach. And just to consider that in a bit more detail spatially for the highway network, here are some of the main roads across the South East. Any route that you can see in blue or dark blue is a 20% or higher increase in traffic flows. And this isn't only a challenge for private transport, but also for buses, for pedestrians, for cyclists as well. So we're taking a different approach. This works on work from Professor Peter Jones at UCL, but we're on a journey. We're on our own trajectory within the South East. It won't happen immediately, but admittedly, the pipeline of schemes within the South East are predominantly highway-based, planning for vehicles. But we're looking to fast-track this, to accelerate our journey towards planning for people and planning for places. And that's not to say we're not already doing aspects of this. Different parts of the South East are on different places on this trajectory. But we need to move towards planning for people. That means providing attractive, affordable, sustainable alternatives. And that has its own challenges. That means we need to rejig the balance of funding towards schemes that support this. It means we need to consider new ways of transport appraisal to realise the true benefit of sustainable transport. And then moving towards planning for places, that's about integrated transport, land use and economic planning. Again, not to suggest this isn't already happening, but Mark showed you that map of the disparity between jobs growth and employment growth in the future. And we need to get quite serious about demand management. As Keith mentioned earlier, about making much more efficient use of our transport networks. So our approach, instead of predict and provide, is looking at plan and provide. We've considered a number of different alternatives. It's quite a privilege in a way to be looking out across the South East to 2050, but there's a lot of inherent uncertainty. Yes, we know about population growth. We have a good idea about aging in our society. We have an understanding of urbanization, and we have an understanding of climate change. But there are many unknowns, and so we looked at 4 different plausible futures, slightly hypothetical, but these scenarios to give us some insight and help us build a more resilient strategy. And here are the 4 scenarios we've considered. The first, a London hub, considering London becoming more the South East becoming more dormitory to London. That would see significant population growth and increases required in radial travel to and from London by road and rail. The second scenario, a digital future. What if we had a much faster take-up of digital technology? We could see major labour market disruption through automation, artificial intelligence, 5G connectivity, and talk of a fourth industrial revolution. That could lead to a reduction in the need to commute and for business travel. At the same time, faster adoption of connected autonomous vehicles and services might mean that we get more into vehicles and travel further. The third scenario, a route to growth, that considers those high productivity sectors that Mark mentioned, and what if we could do more to support those to really optimize economic outcomes and the improvements to cross-regional travel that would be required to support that. And we've already talked today about some of those east-west gaps across the region. And the fourth scenario, what if we see further and accelerated take-up and implementation of environmental policy that really builds on the public and academic awareness and consciousness that we're seeing right now? That would see us having a shift away from heavy industry, much greater focus on protecting the environment, particularly tackling climate change and protecting our environmental assets. But again, demand management policies, and in this scenario, we modelled something akin to a national road user charging scheme. So a rather dry table of some results here, but needless to say that all scenarios could see an increase in population and employment on the business as usual scenario. But what does that mean economically? Well, in terms of GVA, all of the scenarios could see, with the right investment, an increase in productivity and economic contribution to the UK economy. But what's the trade-off? The trade-off is in the number of trips. 24 million trips in a business-as-usual scenario by 2050, but there are two scenarios that would see a significant increase, and mainly by car. Those are the London hub scenario, as we have more trips to London, and our route to growth, where we really focus on the economic strengths of the South East. There's one scenario that sees a reduction in number of trips, and that's the sustainable future that has significant demand management within it. So we've been working very hard with our partners and our stakeholders to gather and consider the insights that this modelling and the other evidence base underpinning this gives us. And as all good transport planning, we have a blended scenario. And our approach is a sustainable route to growth. This embodies the three pillars of sustainability: environmental, social, and economic. And the key transport facets in this approach would be significant increase in investment in sustainable transport to support cross-regional travel primarily, demand management policies, again, akin to a national road user charging system, faster adoption of connected autonomous vehicles or services with a focus on shared mobility, and a reduced need for business travel. And our analysis was really showing that without some significant demand management, we really can't achieve both economic growth and sustainable outcomes for social factors and the environment. So what does our modelling show us? Well, increases in population and employment compared to business as usual, but better economic outcomes, an additional £59 billion of GVA per year on top of the business as usual, not compared to today. And whilst there is a 4% increase in trips, we can see a 9% reduction in private vehicle trips, over a 100% increase in public transport. And there is a slight reduction there in active travel as trip lengths increase for commuting in particular. But there will be a need to turn that around to consider the importance of active travel in first mile, last mile travel to our hubs, as well as for interurban and shorter distance journeys. So we feel this evidence base has provided us with an approach to take forward, and that's very much informed our vision. We use a lot of terminology in the strategy, so we have a vision supported by strategic goals to how we achieve our preferred future or vision, a number of strategic priorities, as well as a number of principles, the cross-cutting themes that run through everything we've done through the strategy. So our vision for a sustainable route to growth is that by 2050, the southeast of England will be a leading global region for net zero carbon, sustainable economic growth, where integrated transport, digital and energy networks have delivered a step change in connectivity and environmental quality. A high quality, reliable, safe and accessible transport network will offer seamless door-to-door journeys, enabling our businesses to compete and trade more effectively in the global marketplace and giving our residents and visitors the highest quality of life. This is supported by 3 goals, those 3 pillars, the 3-legged stool of sustainability, economic, social, and environmental. And these, in turn, are supported by 15 priorities. We've grouped these under those goals, but the reality is that these priorities support multiple goals and interact with each other. And I won't go through all 15 of them, but just to highlight a few, supporting integrated land use and transport planning, the need for increased investment in digital, energy networks, as well as travel demand management. Air quality, we see that as a social factor. It's about our health and well-being and quality of life. Embodying net zero carbon emissions as a target and a priority for the South East, as well as biodiversity net gain in the delivery of the plan. In developing the strategy, a number of themes came up time and time again, and we've presented these as our key principles. They are economic growth at any cost. It is a requirement of subnational transport bodies to demonstrate through a strategy and their delivery plans how they will achieve better economic outcomes. But it is quite clear that it cannot be at any cost, that we must consider sustainability. In fact, sustainability is the key aim there. Achieving environmental sustainability, already mentioned net zero carbon, but also achieving other environmental outcomes, which in turn support the social and economic outcomes. Planning for successful places, that need for integrated transport planning, reducing the need to travel shorter distance trips that can be accommodated more sustainably, walkable, more livable neighbourhoods. Then putting the user at the heart of the system. Already mentioned in the vision, integrated, seamless, door-to-door journeys. I'm a transport planner, very proud to be, proper geek, but we need to think about integrated, seamless, door-to-door journeys, not isolated modes, trips, nodes, networks. That has its place, but we must consider people and places. And then planning regionally for the short, medium, and long term. We wouldn't be doing our job properly if we just presented an end state without giving a roadmap for how to get there and the role of each of us in this room. And through that, that's influenced our consideration of the strategy across 6 different journey types, which I'll now move on to. And these are radial journeys, those journeys that emanate from London or to London, as well as from our South Coast ports and other major economic hubs of the South Coast. Orbital and coastal journeys, and we've already talked about some of those challenges, where there are gaps in the network or whether travel times are painfully slow. Interurban journeys, those journeys that connect our major economic hubs. Local journeys, so journeys from rural areas into our towns and cities. Intra-urban journeys, or first mile, last mile journeys to our transport hubs. The 5th journey type is journeys to our international gateways, as well as freight journeys, not just to gateways, but more broadly. And there's many of those journeys starting and finishing outside of our region. And then future journeys, how will we be traveling in 2050 and in the future? So, the first of a key map for our strategy, this is looking at radial journeys. We fully support work that's already underway, for example, on the Great Western Main Line and Western Rail access to Heathrow, but there are a number of key issues and opportunities that we've identified through this strategy. Issues around the South West Main Line, various rail journey times, the need and support for Island Line renewal on the Isle of Wight. Brighton Main Line improvement programme already underway, but Hastings has incredibly slow rail journey times from London. Road quality is substandard, and support for possible extension of High Speed 1 towards Hastings, Bexhill and Eastbourne, as well as improvements to Kent, and again, journey times, although it's High Speed 1, journey times quite slow, and potential to improve this. Moving on to orbital and coastal, just highlighting some of those gaps east-west, either side of Gatwick, that would really bring sort of Berkshire and Surrey through the Sussex to Kent and Medway, as well as identifying opportunities to improve journey time and connectivity and capacity along the south coast. Again, as with the radial journeys, a real emphasis on rail and public transport rather than highway investment. Moving on to our third and fourth journey types, interurban and local. We've brought these together through the development of a movement and place framework. There are obviously parts of our network that have fast movement and are less about place, and those parts of our region that are much more about place and community where we might see slower movement. And having this framework allows us to consider what the most suitable solutions might be, as well as identifying challenges, but particularly those solutions that will be more sustainable. Our fifth journey type is around freight and international gateways. Western Rail access to Heathrow underway. We fully support Southern Rail access to Heathrow. This isn't predicated or advocating a third runway necessarily at Heathrow. There is a need for this investment now. We're also quite clear that this shouldn't be a premium service like Heathrow Express. This needs to be an affordable service that supports passengers, but also workers either working at the airport or in the wider airport area. Moving down to the south coast, a number of improvements that would support access to both Southampton and Portsmouth and support the expansion of Southampton onto the waterside by both road and rail. Not only important for the southeast, but for the trips that come from the southwest, the Midlands, the north. Moving round to Gatwick, again already mentioned Brighton Main Line improvements, but also trying to improve rail connectivity east and west of Gatwick, both for the airport, but also Gatwick and Crawley as centres for employment and centres for housing in the Gatwick Diamond. And then the Lower Thames Crossing, improving regional connectivity across the UK, but also facilitating access to our ports, particularly Dover. And there are a number of interventions required to support Dover and cross-channel business, a longer-term solution for Operation Stack and lorry parking, as well as road and potential rail enhancements to Dover, and the opportunity for cross-channel rail freight. And finally, consideration of our future journeys. The number of challenges, and I've already had some discussions this morning, but there are significant gaps in our electric or power, digital, and mobile infrastructure network. And this creates real risks, and already are materialising, that some parts of the southeast will be left behind. And whilst a lot of emphasis is put on alternative fuel vehicles, they will not necessarily solve congestion. In fact, government forecasts show that if we reduce the cost of energy, we will actually incentivise additional travel by car with electric or other ultra-low emission vehicles. So our response is that we need to have an integrated strategy that considers how we should be rolling out and supporting our future mobility. But key assets of that are support to central government around regulation and consistency of standards, but a need for much greater progress around mobility as a service, not just in urban areas, but rural areas as well. But also, we mentioned public transport there, but for the potential to bring in the highway network and to consider road user charging as part of that. Much more moving to a model where the user or the beneficiary pays. And of course, we encourage consistency and rollout of smart ticketing systems and would like to see much faster progress with pay-as-you-go technology. So that's it from me. I'm going to pass back to Mark to talk through our next steps.
Yes, just very quickly, thank you for that, Stephen. Just going to talk through what happens next, because the development of the strategy is an ongoing journey. And this slide just summarises the sort of the journey that we're on. So we've completed the economic connectivity review. We now have a draft transport strategy. So we're at the red line, the October red line there. But you can see there's plenty more work to be done. We've got the public consultation exercise, which launched on Monday. I'm just going to say a bit more about that in a moment. So we have the public consultation exercise that will run until January. Final strategy will then be signed off, hopefully, by a shadow partnership board in March 2020. And then you can see the next block down in orange is we're going to be undertaking some area studies. Stephen's shown you some of the initial thinking about the sorts of initiatives we need to develop. We need to work those up in a bit more detail through some area studies, undertaking those in 2 tranches. Once the DFT give us the money that we're looking for to do those. And then once we've completed those area studies, we'll then be producing a strategic investment plan that will set out exactly what sort of interventions and policy interventions we think are needed, the order in which those should occur, and how and deal and grapple with this issue about how those things should be funded and financed. Also be undertaking some thematic work, trying to get us up to speed about the operation of freight within the geography. And as Stephen has said, one of the things that we're trying to, as many people are, is grapple with the future of mobility. So some more work to be done on trying to identify, particularly for TFSE, what is our role in trying to shape the future of mobility and how we can make this new and exciting area work for us and ensure that it's developing in a way that's going to meet the vision that we've set ourselves. So as I said, we're going to be undertaking some area studies, and just a couple of slides that just illustrate how we're going to carve up the territory. So some radial studies looking, as you can see, dividing the territory up into 3 areas. And then there'll also be 2 orbital studies, which will obviously consider, as we've already identified, this kind of key issue about east-west connectivity and how that can be improved. So looking to get on with those as the next stage in the development of the strategy. But today very much is about launching the strategy, and we need your feedback. We want your views on the draft strategy that we've outlined. There's a link here to where you can find the website. You can find a copy of the strategy, a copy of the consultation questionnaire. I'd urge you to, obviously, we've given you an outline today, but there's a lot more detail, a very comprehensive document, a very exciting read, hopefully. Deadline for response is 10th of January 2020, so plenty of time to get your responses in. We'll be having 5 regional consultation events, so an opportunity to dive a little bit more into the detail of the strategy. Those are happening at 5 locations across the geography. We've got one in Reading, one in Southampton, one in Canterbury, one in Brighton, one in Woking. And if you want to hear more information about those or think about coming to one of those, come and see us at the stand at the back there, and we can get you booked onto one of those if you want to hear more. So final version of the transport strategy published in April 2020. So that's been a quick canter through I hope that you found that interesting. I just want to finish by saying thank you to a few people. Obviously, we're a very small team, and a lot of work has gone into producing the strategy. So I'd like to thank Rob, Sarah, Ben, Rachel, Russell, Lucy and Jasmine for their help. A big thank you to WSP and Steer, or Steer and WSP, whichever way around that works, in terms of who've helped us on the journey in developing the strategy. And thank you also very much to the Transport Strategy Working Group that we've had, who've helped us with the development, and the Senior Officer Group as well in their contribution to making this thing happen. So thank you very much.